Welcome to the Beyond High Performance podcast, featuring content and conversations from me, Jason Jaggard, along with our elite coaches at Novus Global, their high-performing clients, and the faculty at the Meta Performance Institute for Coaching. On this podcast, you'll hear some of the world's best executive coaches and high-performing leaders, artists, and athletes discuss how they continue to go beyond high performance in their lives and businesses.
You have to have that clarity of what it is you're going after, that goal, right? And then I think it is now, how will I measure that success? Yeah. And you can create your own metric around it.
That's right.
Right? I mean, yeah, as long as it's repeatable, right? That's the way that works around metrics. Yeah. And then who am I telling? That's that other piece.
That's good.
Who's the accountability, right? Who's going to know that I'm going for this so that they can check on me?
Well, I am so excited to be having this conversation with Kevin Carroll, the one and only Kevin Carroll. And I mentioned this before we started recording, and it is true. And people who know about you know that it's true. But for those who are being exposed to you for the first time, you've lived like 9 lives. Like cats, you got more lives than like 50 cats. And
that is a fact. Yes, I've had a lot of, I tell people, honestly, Jason, that I have a full life. And so then people say, you mean lives, right? Yeah, that's probably more accurate, that I've had a Gumpian journey for sure.
Yeah, well, it makes it Gumpian. Like a lot of people have different chapters of life or phases of life. What I really love about you is every chapter is like, and then I met the president and showed him my war wound on my butt. Like it is like every.
There are.
There's like 10 movies packed into one movie with you. And so we're going to get through some of that. But I'm already going to try to figure out a way to get you to come back, because I don't want to rush through things. And so there's a couple of things I want to talk about today. And one is just, this is a little bit of a lazy question, but so again, how many languages do you speak?
Well, I speak 5. I would have had 6, but I dropped Spanish after 5 minutes in high school. But I always laugh because I still remember that 5 minutes. Es Susana en casa, no en la cocina, donde está en la sala, no en la cocina. And I walked out of class. Because I was a bit of I was a knucklehead back then. But in the military, they identified my gift. So I had it. But I was just a little bit of a knucklehead. So I ended up learning Serbian, Croatian, Czech, German. I can read Russian, speak a little bit of that too. Yeah. So dabble. So yeah.
That's amazing. So, just for our American audience, the one thing that most Americans took a class on and know how to say, like, donde está el shampoo in these pantalones.
Yes.
Like, that's the one thing that you don't, you can do all the other ones.
So, I can do all the other ones. Yes. I can go deep in there. That was, I call that. So that's my Black Jason Bourne time. So there you go. Right. Well, so that's one of those chapters.
And that's kind of like, I didn't know. So I knew about the books and Oprah's list and the speaking and and Nike. Obviously, we'll get to that towards the middle of the conversation. But then I realized that you were in the Secret Service or something. Like you were in. Are you allowed to say like what you were doing?
No, I'm not allowed to say what I was doing. But I had a top secret clearance. I worked at that one of those 3-letter establishments, let's just say that, right? So the 3-letter government establishments. And I was learning languages for a very specific purpose. So yeah.
What did they see in you? How do you identify someone's good at languages? Is that something
how funny? Oh my gosh, this is like, it's going to blow your mind how they do this.
Yeah.
So you take a test. It's called the D-Lab. They still give the same test because I met another person who went through the language school in Monterey, California. And I said, and they're recent. And I said, did you take the D? They said, yeah. I said, no way. Because I was in the military from 80 to 90, right? And I'm like, they're still giving the same. So I went online and I found it. And I was laughing. I'm like, golly. So they give you this test. It's really, really, but you learn 5 sounds, basically, or words. Glip, glop, gleep, glop, glop, glope, glope. Like, I still remember that.
That's incredible.
And then you put on headphones, and then a dialogue starts. And every time you think you hear glip, glop, gleep, glop, they have it on there, and you mark it. And you basically listen to, I can't remember how long it was, and then pencils down, and then they can grade it, and they can tell if you've got good sound recognition, visual recognition, right? So that's what they do. And then they say, oh, you're probably, and if you get a certain score, you're probably good for Chinese. You might be really good for German. You might be good for Spanish. You might be good for Slavic. And then they send you to Monterey, California, to Presidio of Monterey Defense Language Institute, which is still there, and they still take people through it. And still the little market right out the back gate, still there, Compaños, right? Because I asked this person, this is Compaños still there? And they said, yeah. I said, do they still got that great meatball sandwich? They said, yeah. So and they said, wait, when did you go to school? I said, oh, back in early 80s. And you still remember? I said, there's some things you just never forget. And so that's how they identify. But then you go to school and you have 6 weeks to show progress. If you don't show progress in your first language, they actually give you a second language. Because you might not be matched up, but you already showed you have an aptitude. If you don't make it through that, then they let you pick another job. But they try to keep you there because you're the top, I think it was some ridiculous, like top 5% in the military that can pass that test. And so they want to keep you.
Yeah.
And they treat you like you're at a college campus. So you're not really in the military then.
Yeah.
47 weeks, no English is spoken, 10 to 12 hours a day. You're going to learn a language. You're going to learn a language.
Especially if you're wired for it. So then I wonder if there's any parallels in terms of leadership development for that, like the seeing for aptitude, kind of the 6-week boot camp, and then moving people around till they find their sweet spot. Did you find? I mean, you learned 5 languages, so did you just have like multiple sweet spots, or did you have your first sweet spot?
I had my first one, so I learned Serbian first, and then that kind of was the unlock for everything else because now I had a curiosity. For like, what do you learn? So I'm learning a little bit of Korean here. I'm like, because you're going to class with your group in your language, but you're having lunch with everyone else in their languages.
Oh, interesting.
So it was fun to like, what did you learn today? Hey, how do you say that? And so I'm picking up a little Korean, the German. So my curiosity to when I traveled was I wanted to learn certain words or whatever because I wanted to connect with you. So there was a big part of, I think, curiosity was created there and total immersion. So understanding the importance of being immersed in something if you want to get better at it, I think was really important too. So that's what I took away from that was if I drop you in there and immerse you and you have curiosity, you can level up.
You'll figure it out.
And you'll figure it out.
Do you feel like curiosity is like an innate thing? I mean, we even talked about how different you are from your other siblings, or is that cultivated? What's your perspective on that?
I think you innately have a level of it, and then it gets cultivated and strengthened, and it grows and blossoms, if you will, and becomes something that you have an appetite for it every single day.
Yeah.
So I think I had, an innate level of it.
Yeah.
And then it just kept getting nurtured by different individual situations, circumstances. And then I started to realize that it was a strength, but also could create opportunities for me.
Yeah. Specifically the curiosity or your capacity for languages, or what are you talking about?
I think it's the curiosity.
Yeah.
So I think at my core, curiosity has really been a catalyst for me in many, many ways.
And the fruit is there. I mean, I think that's one of the things that creates the extraordinary to extraordinary to extraordinary for you. And I'm wondering, that makes me wonder for our listeners, like in terms of cultivating curiosity, and I'll make a statement I'd love for you to push back or respond to it or build on it, is like, it seems as if the way that you were nurturing your creativity or your curiosity rather, was by putting yourself in environments that demanded you be curious in order to be successful. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it was necessarily that I was always putting myself. I was open to it. So I was open to someone putting me in it also. So it wasn't just that I was instigating it.
Yeah.
Other people might identify, hey, I think you, and then they plot me in there. And so I was just talking to the gentleman, and I know we're going to talk about Nike. He was one of the people who identified me.
Yeah.
And we actually talked about how he saw it in me before I saw it.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the questions I want to explore with you. I sense from getting to know you and from doing some research around you that like mentorship's really important. I mean, you are very generous to younger people. like I mentioned before we turned the mics on, like you have been so kind to Novus Global, and any coach that gets around you, they come away with like a radiance, like you're radioactive in a lot of ways in terms of how you impact people. So I know that you mentoring others is important, but I believe that's because people have mentored you. And so sorry for making this longer than it needs to be, but the question is, and you kind of already answered it. Like it's as if people, it seems like when you were younger, found you. Like when I think about like Earl and Tom and Mr. Lane, like these people from your childhood, they identified you. What is it they saw? Like the question, I guess, is how do you become the kind of person that other people are attracted to want to invest in? Because I know, and the reason why I'm asking is I meet so many people who have no mentors. I mean, so many people who do not have that, and they make up all this stuff about how other people don't care, don't want to make time, or no one will want to help me, or they have all these reasons why, or maybe they think they don't need help, all these reasons. But I can tell you from my life, I am who I am because I have mentors, and I know that's a shared passion. So like, why do you think people identified you? What was it that you had that other people don't, maybe? Or
I go back to curiosity. I think they saw that I was the kid then, right? They would ask questions.
Yeah.
I loved asking questions.
Yeah.
I loved like to find out, how does that work? Or how did you do that? Or how did you figure that out on the game? Or why was that important? Or what's that word again? To my teacher. Or, hey, how could I say this differently? What's another word for this? Diminutive, actually. I learned that in 3rd grade because I hated people calling me short. And so I went to my teacher, Miss Rock. I'll never forget. I went to her. I said, I don't like this word. They keep calling me short. And she says, well, you need a new word. I said, how do you do that? And she pulled out a thesaurus. I had never seen a thesaurus, 3rd grade. And she opens it up. And I'm like, that book's just filled with words.
Yeah.
She goes, yes. And she leaps through. She goes, here's a word instead of short. Diminutive. I was like, that's a nice word.
That's got some flair to it.
So 3rd grade, I start using that word. If you came at me and called me short, I am not short. I'm diminutive. And then she would always say, and if they don't know what it means, you tell them, look it up. So that was so I think my curiosity, because I loved asking questions, people took notice of that.
Yeah.
And because they took notice of it, and I didn't have, my appetite wasn't easily met. Like I kept wanting to ask more. There's IDEO Design, one of the top design firms in the world. Yep. They have this whole premise that you should ask 5 whys.
Yes.
Just keep asking why, but 5 times will get you to a better answer.
Yeah.
And so I was probably doing that before I knew that it was an actual design thinking thing.
Yeah.
But I was always I would ask, well, why and how and what? And so I was really curious that way. And I think folks noticed that about me, where other kids would take what they gave them and they would be gone.
Well, and in contrast, I feel like oftentimes it takes a lot of humility to be curious, and it takes admitting you don't know to be curious. And I think a lot of times people, especially like in an authority age, we're all trying to establish our authority. People establish they think they establish their authority with their answers. The problem with that is answers may attract followers, but they rarely attract mentors.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so your questions, and I'm thinking now, like, if you want to get a mentor, how can you upgrade your level of curiosity? What is it that you don't know? Who knows what you don't know? And how can you come to them with your questions?
Yes. And how do you attract them to want to keep pouring into you?
So then keep going.
Right. And
being curious isn't enough, because you can be curious like in a taking way. You can be curious like in a kind of a
way. You can. Yes, you can. Right. And yes.
How would you bifurcate those so a person knows the healthy way to get curious?
So I think it's always a matter of your intention. My grandfather would say, pay attention to your intention. And so the intention behind your curiosity is that, are you taking? Are you in this taker mindset? Yeah. And then I'm out? Or is it in a reciprocal way? Hey, if you'll share that, I can share something back. Right. And so this generosity, right, of that exchange, I think is really important, because then people want to be around you. They want to spend time with you because they read you real quick, especially, if you're in an authority level, leadership level, people read you real quick. Oh, I know what kind of leader you are. You're trying to get yours. Yeah. You've got a plan. You've got an agenda. I I didn't have an agenda. Even when I played sports, my attitude was, if you shine, I shine.
Yeah.
So my generosity started from my childhood, and that was out of necessity, that I needed to always find a way to extend the play because belonging was so important to me. And so when you start to put all those ingredients together, being curious, longing for connecting, loving being a part of a team, belonging being at your motivation every day because I didn't have a traditional family setting, then all those things colliding created people noticing me. Even if I was diminutive, right? They noticed me, and they noticed that was a little different.
That is, and I, I'm kind of studying you and have been every time we're around each other. You're just such a fascinating person to watch and experience. And you're not just, so a lot of people who are listening to this, a lot of companies and things have keynote speakers and things like that. And I want to say right now, if you're looking for a keynote speaker as the world opens back up, my first experience with Kevin Carroll was speaking at the Story Conference, who's led by our friend Harris III. And he's amazing too. We need to get him on the podcast, but I'd never seen a talk like yours before. And so if anyone's looking for a pizzazz, like something that's going to leave people talking about the thing.
And the ball and the kicking of the ball, dude, like I'm infamous.
It's amazing.
At Story. I'm infamous at Story for kicking a ball in the Symphony Hall of Nashville.
It's amazing. And the thing is, he punched his ball, and the person in the balcony catches it like it's a home run.
Yes, like it was, and it was the most amazing uproar, right? It was that's another word I got, cacophony. Yes. It was the most beautiful cacophony. Yes. Third grade Miss Rock again. Yeah, that was my other one. She used that on us as a class, actually, all the the cacophony in this room is unbearable.
It sounds like a compliment, but it's
but it's not. Yes. It's not. Yes.
So if you can't tell, he is just pure energy, and you can't, like, your mirror neurons. I don't know how our brains are wired, but we can't help but be infected by it. And so please, if you're listening to this and you're on boards or whatever, decide who gets speakers, talk to Kevin. But so I say that to say, you love teams. Like when I watch you, you love teams. And the reason why this is important is because, there's kind of the solopreneur movement. There's and I mean that word in a compliment way, but like now that technology is allowing us to work by ourselves and we don't necessarily need teams to do what we used to do with teams. Now there's almost like this anti-team sentiment. And Kevin, we see this a lot with coaches. Like, there's a lot of coaches out there that worked in the private sector and they hated being on teams. And so they left to hang up their own shingle. And now they coach teams on how to lead teams, but they hate teams. Which I think is hypocritical and probably odious and toxic. You love teams. And there's something, I think, when and I say to say, when a person comes to you, can smell whether they love teams or not. And people who love teams, you want to help win because you can trust that they're going to make you part of their team. That is a truth. That was a truth bomb, like what you just said there, because I can be an individual contributor, but I know I'm only as good as the people I surround myself with. Yeah. And that's the way I know, right? So I know that the way to get something truly amplified and advanced is not going to be on my solo effort. Yeah. I have to, as Harris put it, the lonely hustle, right? It's not about the lonely hustle. It's about how do I collect. Well, it's so funny. He actually teases me and says, I collect souls. I curate souls and collect souls. Yes. And then I tap into the people I need as appropriate for my endeavors. But they also look for me for their endeavors. Yep. And so I have this wonderful set of individuals around my life that are part of my team when I call upon them. So it's my league of extraordinary creatives, I call them, right? And so that's what I tap into when necessary. But I do retreat and have my time as an individual where I love to regroup, calculate, think about, strategize, right? Come up with, and like, okay, now I'm going to go to this person or that person because I know they're the perfect person to invite to play, to join me. And team always represents play for me, right? And so who do I want to invite to play with me on this, right? And so I'm looking for not only just kindred spirits, but also a set of skills or insights or a thought process or anything that will be complementary
Two, but also to amplify and advance.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love being parts of teams, and it comes from my sports background.
Yeah.
But I can take it all the way back to my playground experience.
Because it doesn't come from your sports background. You got into sport because of this, not the other way around.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So go ahead and tell our audience about the playground experience, because I was wanting you to go there.
So, and I always say this with so much reverence and respect, Preston Playground was one of the most amazing places in our neighborhood. And for me, it was the place. It was the place that I, won and lost reputations. I learned so many life skills. I recognized the importance of community. I realized that I could do nothing on my own. I needed people to support me. And the eclectic, crazy, eccentric group of people who poured into me from that neighborhood playground is legendary, like legendary. So part of my little limited series podcast, Cataglyphs, I talk about Preston Playground. I talk about the mosaic of men who poured into me and helped me grow as a child. And what I realized at Preston Playground was that you were never allowed to stand on the sideline there. That was one of the magical things about Preston Playground. You had to figure out a way to get everyone involved in the game. That was a rule in our neighborhood. No one was allowed to be standing away from. So if the sides were uneven in a game, then you better use your imagination and come up with ghost runners, ghost players, something to even the sides out. So then you would negotiate how good that ghost player was and what they could do, how fast they were. And then you would, okay, ghost runner on first. So now everybody knew that ghost runner, if you kick the ball a certain place, that they could only get the third because we've already negotiated how fast they are. But if the older kids saw someone standing and not in the game, they'd make you stop your game. And they would say, hey, why isn't that kid playing?
Where did that come from? Like, where did that?
Our neighborhood, it was an interesting neighborhood. Sports was the vehicle of energy in our neighborhood. Reputations were won or lost through sports. It just was a thing in our neighborhood. Sports was that. Yeah. And it wasn't that a bunch of people went on to play professionally or whatever. It was more of a thing, I think, that just from a self-esteem standpoint, from notoriety, being recognized, sports was that. But it all started with the innocent games of kickball, right, and basketball and, football, but just like, neighborhood football. But we would go to other neighborhoods and challenge other neighborhoods. So I was playing up with the older kids before it was even a thing, because they saw how I played. And they saw that I had this ability to see games differently. Right away, they noticed that. First, I had wheels. I was fast. But then they also noticed I had a high athletic IQ. They didn't call it that, but they say, hey, little Carroll, you get it. Come here. You're coming with us. And so I would go and play with, I'm 6 or 7. I'm playing with the 10, 11, 12-year-olds. Right. And they would say, you know what to do. And they saw my generosity. They saw that it wasn't important for me to be the star. I wanted to always find a way to extend the game. So we would play longer.
And so like literally like extend the time.
Yes, I'd find a way to just keep everyone invested in it and involved in it. Well, let's run it back. Let's do one more, right? And then that person would score like, yeah, let's do another one. So I'd make sure that I was always keeping you invested. Yeah. In some way you had a great play. So I'm always giving you shine, always talking about you. I was just that kid. Yeah. And that I think was recognized really quickly. And so when I go to play, I always go to Preston Playground. I always go to my first team experiences. And team always represents belonging and community and connection. And then I take it back to the roots, Preston Playground.
Well, and I don't want to jump around too much, but since we're on the theme of play, one of the things I really also like about you is when most people think about teams, oftentimes they think about like drama and politics and personalities not getting along and gossip at the copy machine or whatever. There's that kind of thing. I feel like you do look at it through the lens of play, and it makes sense where that comes from. But can you talk a little bit about that, like in terms of the power of play to create community? And the story that I heard was the you playing tag at Nike?
Oh yeah. So I got 3,000 people to play tag at Nike for 3 hours. Here's another Miss Rock word, bedlam. It was the most beautiful bedlam I'd ever seen. Yes, 3 hours, complete chaos. Yeah, it was amazing. And we were playing in one building for a little bit, like a month. Yeah. And the game had swelled from like 5 people to 100 people in a month's time. And so people were coming from other buildings to try to join our game. And so I got a call from HR thinking I'm getting in trouble. And they said, hey, could you get 3,000 people to play tag? I'm like, yeah, I could get 3,000 people to play tag. And so they said, would you organize that? I said, absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And someone had it just this week. Someone sent me a picture of one of the IT jerseys. They still have one.
So wait, tell us how.
So we gave out these these pennies, these jerseys that said IT on it, right? 25 of them, and we shared them all around the campus. We sent out an all-employee email with the rules, no tag backs, where you were safe, and you couldn't stay in your office. You had to go out, right, and be basically part of the game.
Yeah.
And it starts at like 1, ends at 4. Game on.
Yeah.
And 25 IT jerseys were handed out all over the campus. And when you tag someone, you take your jersey off and hand it to that person. Now they're IT, but they couldn't tag you back. No tag backs. Yeah. So I didn't get any of the IT jerseys back, not a single one. And just this week, someone sent me a picture. Remember this, right? I was like, that's so good.
I would have that framed on the back of my wall.
They did. They had it framed. Yeah. People framed them and kept them. And so I just thought what was so powerful about that moment was when I shared why we were playing and what was at the premise of that and the why behind it. More innovation, more creativity, better problem solving, more abstract thinking, finding time for fun. I always cite Stephen Johnson's book, Wonderland.
Really? Yeah.
And in that, so in that book, what he researched were 20th century breakthrough innovations. And what he discovered is when people actually got their breakthrough, they were having fun. They were playing. And so he has this wonderful quote, you'll find the future wherever people are having the most fun.
Wow.
I love that quote, right?
Yeah.
You'll find the future wherever people are having the most fun. So I always say play is serious business.
Yeah.
And play is serious in the business of innovation, creativity, problem solving, connection, belonging, team, all those things. But what do we tend to do? We marginalize it. We think it's frivolous.
Yes.
We basically push it to the weekends. Oh, do that on your own time.
Yep.
And now more than ever, coming out of what we've just gone through, a global traumatic event, we need to find time for fun. We need to find time for play, right? If we're going to problem solve and find how we're going to get to this brave new world.
Yeah, that's powerful. And then is there, I'm thinking like is there a Venn diagram of play that is in some ways disconnected? Although I think getting into a mind space of play, you're always going to find connections back to your work. Is there a kind of play that overlaps like the work? And I guess what I'm asking is there a way to play and work at the same time? Like a tag game is kind of like moving away from the nuts and bolts of work and then coming back with a renewed energy. Do you help people figure out ways of playing that are also working simultaneously, or does that take all the fun out of play?
Yeah, well, I think it can have it can be side by side, right? Walking along with you. I don't think that it's ever going to be a thing where some people get to blur the lines between their work and play, like I do, you do, right? But some people have very clear roles and jobs and what they're doing. Yeah. And so how do we inject moments of play and fun? But I always say play with purpose, purposeful play, and finding purposeful play moments throughout your day that you are almost orchestrating. It's almost like an editorial calendar. Like that we're going to have these moments where we take these breaks, but they're very strategic and they're very intentional. I actually did this the other day with a group before we had a Zoom call. So we're on the Zoom, we're getting ready to start. I said, before we start, everyone gets 3 minutes. I want you to walk away from here, but I want you to use one of your senses only one sense, get out of your space and discover something and come back and tell the story. But only one of your senses. So eyes, ears, nose, right,
Yeah.
whatever, mouth, right, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! In 3 minutes, they came back with these amazing, beautiful stories, and they all went. That was only 3 minutes.
Yeah. So it doesn't
I'm
have
like,
to take.
yes.
It's just a
It
jolt.
doesn't take long. It's not some like, oh, we got to carve out half a day. No, you can actually do something really intentional in a short amount of time.
That's good. Well, and I'm pretty sure this was inspired by you. But one of the things that we tried, there was a petting zoo that we heard about, and during the pandemic, obviously people can't go to petting zoos, and so they're trying to find innovative ways of pivoting being a petting zoo. And so what they did was, you could hire them to have a llama show up on your Zoom call. And so what we started doing with like clients in our meetings, we would show up and it was kind of a surprise. We would have our meeting and 50 people would show up. And then also in one of the Zoom squares would be like a llama with like a birthday hat on or something.
Good. Yes.
It was awesome. Like it was awesome.
Yes.
And it was like, okay, what would Kevin do? Like a WWKD a little bit. And it was like, how we make this interesting. And
I think it's brilliant because the reason that's good is if you can bring anything to surprise and delight and create curiosity, like these little Easter eggs like that, right? And wait to see who someone puts something in the chat or comments about it and who ignores it. and then to go, seriously, you're ignoring that there's a llama in a square? Like, what's your deal?
Yeah.
Like, and reward the person who actually puts the first note in there or raises their hand about it. See, this is the way that you actually create behavior modification around it.
Yeah,
and you start teaching people because I'm rewarding that behavior. I'm rewarding your curiosity. I'm rewarding the fact that you had the courage to say something or ask like, yo, what's going on with that llama up there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if everybody's like, I'm not going to be the one, I'm not going to be the one, I'm not, right? Then I know something's going on with your culture.
Yep. Well, that's interesting. And because that is counterintuitive, at least for me a little bit. And this is outing myself in some ways. It's like when I try something new, I'm so insecure about it. Just like the professor, I used to teach at Pepperdine and I would get all these great reviews. And then like one person didn't like me. That's where all my attention went, was the one person who didn't like it versus the people who do. And what you're saying is, no, you want to do the opposite. When you're trying something new or trying something fun, be looking for the ambassadors of play, the people who are kind of getting it and then calling them out and inviting and praising them and affirming them to create that culture. Is that what you're saying?
And I would go even deeper. They're ambassadors of curiosity.
That's good.
They're curious souls.
Yeah.
And noteworthy to make sure, because they could be in IT, accounting, strat planning, right? Food services. And they're, hey, what's going on with that llama?
Yeah.
What department are you in?
Yeah.
I need to pay attention to that, right? Because you had that courage and you noticed it, where other people who I might be paying you and you're in marketing and design and you didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So how do we reward that? But how do we also instigate it more so that we're on the lookout for it? So I also, that's part of like my whole lookup day. I have one lookup day every week. I have one day that I look up more than I look at a small screen.
That's good.
So I talk about looking up at the big screen called life, right? So everything's in HD and 3D, right? I remind people of that. Yeah. But I do it with an intention to discover something I might not have seen before. I might use all my senses. I might only use one sense, but I'm spending more time on one day every week. I've been doing this for years, where I try, and then I keep in my notes on my phone what I discovered that day.
That's incredible.
And it's so much fun because it's actively practicing, right? This is a muscle, curiosity, play, it's a muscle, right? And you have to keep it strong, agile, and nimble. So you have to keep it always active and working. You can't just summon it up when someone says, we're going to have a brainstorming session and you better have some ideas. People will seize up when you do that.
Yeah.
But if you've got creative confidence, let's go. Let's dance. Bring it on.
Well, and if you've cultivated creative confidence in the team as like a discipline, now, not to get too far in the weeds on this with the logistics, but so on your say it again, what'd you call it? Your screen day or your screen?
Oh, my lookup day. Yeah, my lookup day.
So with your lookup day, do you modify your schedule to accommodate that? Or are you still having meetings and doing your thing and that's just an extra layer that you put over it? How does that work?
Yeah, it can be it can be done in many different ways. So because I walk from my house to my office space, I do it then. So on the walk, I'll do that. But when I take my break, if I give myself, take 15, right? You gift that to yourself. In that 15, it's my lookup moment. Let me go out, do a walk or whatever, use my senses in some unique way, jot down a note afterwards. And then after a month's time, look at what you actually discovered. But it's always, there's so much science behind why getting up, why movement unlocks, right? Synapses, right? There's plenty of research around that. So the more that we can actually build that into someone's day and not anchor them to a screen for time, zoom, stacking them, their productivity is going to drop off so quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Do you ever, so like Steve Jobs was known for going on walks during meetings. Like he would say, hey, walk with me. And you'd walk while and obviously with the pandemic, you're locked on screens.
The other thing that Steve Jobs did, I can't even believe you just brought that up. Oh my God, it's so good because I have it right. This was not scripted. So Steve Jobs, the only time he turned his phone off was when he would go into the innovation lab at Apple, and his assistant, who just wrote a book, she knew where he was when she couldn't reach him. But that was the only time he turned his phone off.
That's fat.
Was to go play, and that was his play time.
Yeah.
He would go into the innovation lab and just be where his feet are, be present.
Yeah.
And I think that's really something. When you brought up Steve Jobs, it just made me think he found time for play and fun.
Yeah. And to that, in that spirit, Kevin does a lot of things. He's a writer, he's a speaker, he's a coach. And so this question is more coming with the coach Kevin hat. When you work with clients, do you integrate movement into your work with clients? And I say that to say, generally, I don't. That could be an area of growth for me, is how can I integrate? I'm staring at a screen with someone who's on the other side of the planet or whatever, and we're having a conversation. And after a while, maybe after a couple of years of working together, it gets a little stale, that kind of thing. Like, how does it work for you?
Oh, we talk about looking at them from a holistic standpoint. And because my background's in athletic training, sports medicine, human performance, I'm always going to address your energy. I'm always going to address, what are you doing to replenish? What does your rest and recovery look like? That's so important. And so how are we actually addressing your creative energy? Because that is directly going to affect your creative confidence. So we're always making sure that there's these moments, even when we're having a conversation, that, hey, okay, we've hit the 30-minute moment. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes, but here's what I want you to do. And I'll give a little task with it, right? I'll give a little game. See if you can find, right? And take your phone, right? I want to see if you can find this item. And they might be in their house, so it might be a little mini scavenger hunt. But I'll have them do that and come back, and you see their smile, like, I found 3 of them. I'm like, no way. They said, yeah, it was amazing. And you know what? I never saw those before. I never noticed those before. So how do we actually inject movement as part of how you're coaching people up, recognizing that it cracks them open again?
Yeah.
Right? It opens you back up, because movement is at the root of all of that, right? Synapses, right? Physiology, all those things are happening. So I think there's a great opportunity to offer that to your teams, to your direct reports, to people if you're coaching them up, to give them those moments, right? And gift that to them. And you're going to get more fruitful conversation after those kinds of, purposeful play, those breaks.
Yeah. And that's great. Because even today we had a several hour long meeting with our advisory board, and that probably would have been helpful for them.
Honestly. And I think when you already let people know, when you're at the opening of your meeting and you say, we are going to have 3 moments of purposeful play, and they're going to be breaks. You're going to walk away. You're going to come back, but we want to actually instigate some inspiration for you, whatever. Oh my gosh. Now they're already leaning up, right? Like, what? Because now they're like, versus like, oh, here we're starting.
Well, I appreciate your optimism. So I want to play this. I'm going to play the cynic just for a second. So like for some people, like with I'm on the board and I'm stuffy and whatever. Like for people who are kind of like anti-play, would you point them towards Red Rubber Ball, which is your book that you wrote on play, or where would you point people who are wanting to develop a sophisticated defense of strategic play?
Oh, I would absolutely get sciencey on them, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go to the National Institute for Play and cite some of their research. I would talk about the importance of neoteny, holding on to the characteristics and attitude of youth, right? That's what neoteny is, right? And so how do you bring that forward, right? That's from the National Institute for Play. I'd cite PlayWorks, which does, play for youth, but they also do corporate recess, right? And why that's important and how that helps you unlock problem solving, more creative confidence, your ability to come up with solutions for whatever you might be facing as a team. So I'm gonna come at you sciencey, like I'm coming with all the smoke, man. Like,
Good.
let's go, let's dance. Like I love haters, right? I love the naysayers. I love please come, because that's the joy for me, is to convert you.
Yeah.
I want them heathens, Jason. Like, yeah, oh, you standing outside Rev Kev's church? I'm coming to you. Rev Kev's coming to you, right? And preaching the play sermon, right? I'm coming with you, yeah. So I think it's so important for folks to understand that.
Yeah.
That if you can just bring a little bit of play, and I can make it as sophisticated as you need it to be, but you will be playing. You might not even realize it. And I'm going to point out what you just gained.
Yeah.
What was the takeaway for you? What was the value add for you? I can create all of that around it to give you more justification to do it.
Yeah.
And to understand the why behind it. It's just, there is a plethora of stuff out there. Another Miss Rock word, plethora out there available. And so I love having those conversations with folks. Yeah. So just come to me, ask me. I can provide you with more than what you would need.
Well, we're gonna give you Kevin's details in the show notes, as well as that laundry list that he just dropped. We'll put all that stuff in there. And actually, if you're listening to this, we actually have a PDF that will give you some activities to do around this stuff that Kevin's talking about as well. So we'll give you opportunities to connect with Kevin and all that kind of stuff. Actually, I like what you said just a second ago in terms of the love of conversion, which is probably a religious word for persuasion and influence, and just like lighting people up and taking people from being antagonistic towards being advocates for this beautiful thing. This is connected. It's going to seem like a shifting without the clutch a little bit, but I do admire this about you. And I think this is something that most people forget sometimes, and it happens behind the scenes. And I thought about, for you specifically, when you were mentioning on one of the podcasts I was listening to about you mentioned that you had written Nike several times asking to, like, you didn't wait.
I wanted to speak at this basketball camp. Yeah. The Nike All-Star basketball camp. It was at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, IUPUI, right? Mm-hmm. So they had it for years there, and I knew about it, and I was a speaker then, right? And I thought I was killing it, right? On the speaking circuit with summer basketball camps, and so I should be doing something with Nike, right? Yeah. So I just started writing letters to them. I still have the posters that they sent to me as a consolation prize, right? Because they didn't need my services, so
they turned you down. Like you wrote them.
They turned me down.
And not to ruin, depending on what we put at the beginning of this to brag about you, like Phil Knight called you the mayor of Nike Town years later, but years rewind, and you're this, punk speaker guy who's writing these, hey, please, I'd like to speak at Nike.
I really think I could do a great job there, right? And help you guys out.
But this is the thing though, because again, like your generosity of spirit, your love of team, your positive energy, your care about extending play and all that kind of stuff. And like that takes some body parts to write, at the time anyway, the preeminent icon of all things sport in a global perspective, and say, I think I should be speaking at your camps. Can you tell us, do you remember what you put in the letters?
Roughly, I literally was just saying, I've been speaking at camps here in Philadelphia. Here's the size of the groups that I've been speaking to. They've all been at an all-star level, girls and boys. We've got a great basketball history here in Philadelphia. I've been told that I do a really good job.
Right?
So just basic stuff. It wasn't like I was setting the world on fire with the letter. And I'm like, well, they should let me know.
Yeah.
And so at first I got no responses. And then I get this response, and there's like this, and I still have the posters. Yeah. Like I have them right there in my office because I always have them out. as a reminder. And I actually kept them in my office when I finally got to Nike as a reminder, right? That to not be discouraged.
Yes.
If it doesn't play out right away, right? And I've always been told hard work never goes unrewarded.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
And I just kept going and having no idea that when I got the job with the Sixers, and the reason that I said yes to that job was the head coach said it will change your network for you and your family.
Oh, that's good.
I didn't know what he meant by that, except that maybe my kids will have more access to things and within 1 week of getting that job, I was speaking at a big Nike event. Yeah, with Spike Lee, Ahmad Rashad, Quinn Buckner, yes, and an executive from Nike.
See, and
who was the catalyst for going back and telling them there's this guy with the Sixers. But I don't think I would have had the arrogance to say, "Yo, dude, I've been writing to y'all.
I've been writing. Did you get my letters? That's your first time.
Did you get my letters?"
But there's a few things about this. One is like, for people, I meet so many people who, if you ask them when was the last time you got rejected, it's like 20 years ago, And when I heard that story, I was like, man, like here's a guy who gets rejected on the regular because he is advocating for what he wants. He's like asking for what he wants. Like you weren't mad that Nike said no. You probably agreed with them. Thanks for the posters. Like I get it.
Yeah, the posters are dope. Yeah, I was excited to get the posters. I'm like, that's not bad. Consolation.
But like, who are you asking? Like, if you're listening to this, what do you want, and who are you asking, and are you getting turned down? Because if you're not getting turned down, you're probably not asking enough. You're probably not going.
Dream doesn't scare you. It's not big enough. It should be audacious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it should scare you. Like, should I do this? Is this the right thing? And Jason, this. If your dream is audacious, a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, it's this North Star, there's going to be so many wins on the journey to try to get to that.
Yeah.
That when you look back and take stock, it's like, well, dang, I've been winning a lot. And maybe I never got to that, but that's okay. Yeah. Because you've been winning, right? And I think that, when you talk about the idea of going beyond high performance, that's what it is.
Yes, absolutely.
That's exactly what it is, right? I can go beyond my limits. I can go beyond what's in front of me. I can keep stretching. Yeah. Oh, that was a win, but you know what? I can go further.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a phrase I think of a lot, which is asymmetrical risk. And this means something specifically in economic world, so I'm going to kind of use it inaccurately. But essentially, the way that I look at asymmetrical risk is how do you go after things that even if you lose, you win?
Yeah.
And I feel like
that's fact. About. That's a truth bomb. Honestly, it's exactly it. Even if you quote unquote lose, you win.
Yep.
Right? Because in the quest, in the reach, there's going to be growth. Let's just look at the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. I was just talking with someone about post-traumatic stress versus post-traumatic growth.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Explain to our audience may not know what that means. So go ahead and give them
post-traumatic stress, we've heard that a gazillion times. PTSD, right?
Yep.
You're broken. You are broken. But post-traumatic growth is that you actually find a way to rise above the trauma. You find a way to identify that, oh, wait, I've grown in some way during this amazing global catastrophic, right? I mean, just ridiculous, right? Calamity thing that we've been going through. And I love this, that in fact, it's so funny. I have these in front of me because I was telling my friend this. So imagine this. You don't have to have all of them. You could have only one or several of these, but there are 4 things to identify. And Adam Grant actually just talked about this with Abby Wambach for Team USA. And so I was put on to this interview. And so I was like, I listened to it like 5 times. I said, that is so good. So post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, hit me.
You will have a greater sense of personal strength. Like, whoa, like I can get through some tough stuff.
Yes. Yep.
A elevated level of gratitude or appreciation, especially for something you took for granted. Guess what? I love feeling air on my face without a mask on. Like, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Gratitude, appreciation. Hey, deeper relationships are a result.
Yeah, because you reach out to people to support you and to go through the tough
Yes,
times.
right. And you see who your ride or dies are. You see who your people are, right? You see who that is. And I love this one. Many people will get a new sense of purpose or possibilities.
Yeah.
During a traumatic moment.
Yeah.
And this was probably the greatest global traumatic moment, right? That we'll all experience.
Yeah.
So imagine that you feel like, hey, I can deal with some difficult. I've got an elevated level of gratitude. My gosh, my relationships are even stronger.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think I want to do something with my life that's going to leave a legacy.
Yeah, it's clarifying.
And that's this ability to grow within trauma. Yeah. And I think that's what's really been remarkable. So when you go through something challenging, big, hairy, audacious goal, and you don't win, but asymmetrical growth, asymmetrical wins, right? You're still winning, even though you're quote unquote, well, you didn't get, well, yeah, but guess what? What the Olympians, right?
Yeah.
Their whole thing was arate, right? Personal best. Why do Olympians get so excited? Well, you came in 5th or 6th, but I PR'd. I had a personal record.
I didn't know that.
It was amazing.
Yeah, is that true?
Yeah.
That's how.
So Arate was. I was only competing with myself. The original Olympians, Arate, the highest level of virtue. That's what that stands for. So in the original Olympics, that Greek word, arete, that's what they were striving for. I wasn't worried about who was lined up next to me, and I was not competing with them. I was competing with myself. That's why Olympians get so excited. Yeah, I might not have medaled, but oh my gosh, look what I did. So all of us have that ability and that opportunity to look at asymmetrical wins, right?
Yep.
Post-traumatic growth, all that.
I love, well, where my mind goes when you say that, Kevin, is like, so if you're listening to this, do you know what personal best you're currently striving for? You know, whether it's financial, whether it's obviously physical or athletic, those types of things, or whether it's, with coaches, that makes me wonder if our coaches are listening. It's like, what thing are you trying to get better at? And how do you measure it? And then how do you know if you're getting better at it? I mean, is that part of the process, or am I missing something?
No, that you're spot on. That's exactly it, right? Is you have to have that clarity of what it is you're going after, that goal.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think it is now, how will I measure that success? Yeah. And you can create your own metric around it.
That's right.
Right. I mean, as long as it's repeatable, right? That's the way that works around metrics. Yeah. And then who am I telling? That's that other piece.
That's good.
Who's doing the accountability? Right? Who's going to know that I'm going for this so that they can check on me?
Yeah.
And they can be supportive plus demanding of me, challenging me, asking me, right? So that when I see that person, oh, have I been doing the work or not? If I know you're avoiding me, I know what's up. If you're coming to me and say, oh, I can't wait to let you know what I've been doing, my progress. So I think that's that other piece that people miss, because you can't do it in a vacuum, because then you can be high-fiving yourself, right? But are you really advancing something, a hope, a dream, an aspiration?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a key thing and that goes all the way back to teams, right? And who's on your team? It's not the lonely hustle, right? It's who are those people that got you and support you, but also challenge you, right? And lovingly shove you towards your destiny.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, and sadly, we are out of time. Let me tell you the audience just briefly what we didn't get to today. We didn't get to talk about Kevin's childhood, and because he can talk about post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress with authority. He's not just some guy who's had an easy life telling us things we should do. We didn't get to talk about that. We didn't talk about anything about Nike and what that was like working at one of the greatest companies. We didn't get to talk about post-Nike. So these are all things I'm hoping I can bring you back to talk about, like post Nike. What was it like shifting? And then, of course, your career. You've had an amazing career after transitioning out of Nike. How do you do that? How do you go from one great career to another great career? So I want to get to all that. Maybe as a final story, since we're out of time, I do want, and this kind of goes towards the meta performance and the asymmetrical risk and moving from one greatness to another. Maybe a nice close is, you have this, you're at Nike, you have this sense that you're meant for something. You love what you're doing, but you kind of have this sense you're meant for something more, which I love, by the way. You're at Nike, but you think that there's something more. That's awesome. And then you go into Phil Knight's office. Can you just, as a close, maybe tell us about that conversation? Because I think that's a nice send off to people.
And that's asymmetrical risk, right? So I would call it, I used to call it, well, still call it strategic risk taking.
Yeah.
So I'm thriving at Nike. Like, I mean, I have my own title, Catalyst. That's my official title. My subtitle is Mayor of Nike by Phil. He gave me that title. Phil Knight, who was CEO and chairman at the time. We have a standing meeting. It's been 2 years that we've been doing. It's a monthly meeting that I go and spend 20 minutes with him and give him a sense of what's going on within the campus, the culture. And I'm now have a book deal with ESPN and Disney. I'm still at Nike. I have a speakers bureau representing me. I'm doing that on my own personal time. Nike's allowing that. Nice. And I have a talent agency now, CAA, right? And so now I'm really conflicted. And so I go in for one of my meetings with Phil and I said, listen, these things are happening. I love it here though. Yeah. But I really feel like maybe I should go. Yeah. And what do you think? And he goes, and I never forget how clear he was with the words. He looked me dead in my eye and he basically said, I don't let talent leave here. And he paused. And so I'm bracing for like something like this really like, hardcore, like, and you ain't going nowhere. Right. Yeah. And then he said, we'd be selfish to keep you. You've got bigger work to do. Yeah. Basically go forth and prosper. Yeah. And with that blessing from Phil Knight, I left Nike in 2004 and I've been on my own for 17 years now as an author, a speaker, instigator of inspiration. And that's the cliffhanger. We're leaving with that. Ooh,
leaving with it. Now we can go back and see what happened. And I want to say this, I feel like you have done nothing but honor Nike since leaving. And I think there's so many nuggets from your life that I'm excited if you're ever willing to extract from for the purpose of people listening to this. Like you left well, you left in a way where it was a gift to them and to you. And there's just a lot of goodness there. And I want to thank you for that. And I've continued to do work with them for 17 years. I just did a project with them a week ago with University of Texas. So, I mean, my relationship with them is as strong as it was when I was physically in the space. Come on. And none of that's on accident, but it's intention. You've been carrying that since you were a kid. And speaking of leaving well, thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. I can't wait to have you back. I just learn so much from you every time we talk. So thank you so much for being a gift to the world. Kevin, where can we hear about you, learn about you? Are there any things you want us to click on or go check out around your world? It's easy to find me. Just at me at KC Catalyst with the K. That's easy. You can find me on all my socials, and that'll take you to anything else that you want to do. You go down the rabbit hole, the catalytic rabbit hole for sure. Every rabbit hole, it is a rabbit hole because it takes you to Wonderland. At KC Catalyst with a K. Catalyst. Yeah, and, KCKATALYST. I love it. Thank you, Kevin. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. My man, I appreciate you. Be well. Godspeed. Peace and play.